Hey guys, Christina here, and today I have a look for you what we read last month, which was February 2020, both in our homeschool and for personal reading. We have 5 children between the ages of 3 and 12, and majority of them like to read, and so do I. So we have a few books here that I'm going to go through. First, I'm going to start with our read alouds. So I mentioned this last month. We were reading On Mr Bowditch. We had quite a debate on how to say this name, by Jean Lee Latham. And it's quite a thick book. There are a few little pictures in here. But we all really enjoyed this book. This book went along with the Story of the World 3 that we're doing this year. If you want to see our curriculum for the year, I'll link it up top. All the kids gave it between a 4.5, 4 3/4 kind of range. They all really liked this book, and I really liked it. It's based on a real person, his life. He was an amazing mathematician and navigator. And he had a lot of challenges in his life. In fact, there's a part of the book where my kids were predicting what it was going to say next, because it always said, and then it didn't happen, but it didn't happen, but then something else happened. And he just faced a lot of challenges in his life, but he continued to self-learn and self-educate and to hold himself to a high standard. And he just seemed like, at least from the book, a person who was very genuine and very much wanted to learn and to teach others as well. So we really enjoyed this book. It also had a lot of educational value in terms of learning about sailing, about navigation, about the world and what it was like at that time. So really highly recommend this book. It was definitely a favorite of ours. So the next book is this one here, Tom Appleby, another debatable name, Convict Boy by Jackie French. And this went along with our Story of the World as well. It's a story of an 8-year-old boy from England who is caught stealing, and he is sent as part of the first fleet to Botany Bay to Australia, to where they're gonna develop a convict area, jail. I'm not sure what they called it. So it has huge historical relevance, not only for what life in England was like at that time and how they dealt with criminals. I mean, an 8-year-old boy, he stole something small and he's sent across the world. But also what the travel conditions were like on those boats and what it was like for convicts, and then setting up the new area. Because when they first arrived, they really didn't know anything about Botany Bay, and they ended up saying it wasn't suitable, and so they had to move a little further north, I believe it is. This book, it took a while to get into it. I'll show you the inside. It's quite a thick book too. Quite a bit of it takes place in England, and so it was a little slow. And on the back, it was recommended, well, it's not on the back, but I think it said about 8 to 12 was the recommended age. I would say it's older. There were a couple parts I really wish weren't in this book, because then it would be great for younger children, but there were a few things, particularly about women's chests, that I just felt were not appropriate. I had to do a little editing. And there's some parts like when the convicts arrive and the men and women who have been on separate boats, they're on land together again. There's a few things, not super graphic, but enough I wish wasn't in there. So I would say it's more like 12 and up, maybe even a little bit more, just because of those parts. If you're gonna read to your children and you can edit them out, then younger. My younger kids liked it. And just so fascinating. It does have mention of ghosts. There is quite a bit of death and some pretty horrible conditions. So just be aware of that. If you want to pre-read it for your children, it might be a good idea. But I found it was hard to find books about Australia kind of in this time period, and so I really appreciated this one. Jackie French has actually written a lot of children's books, and so I'm gonna start looking at some of her other ones, particularly she's Australian, so about Australia. But yeah, I think as long as you kind of take those things into consideration, it was a really good book, really educational. My children liked it. They gave it between 4 and 5 stars, depending on which child, so that was definitely a winner for us. And the last one we're just finishing up right now is from the Dear America series, A Coal Miner's Bride, the diary of Anika Kameninska of Latimer, Pennsylvania, 1896. So we probably have, I think we have about 60 pages left. We'll be finishing it next week. So far it's pretty good. I'll talk more about it next month, but again, that just goes along with our Story of the World. So the other book we did was actually a picture book called The Food Parade. And I'll put a picture. It was to do with our nutrition unit that we're doing, and I just wanted to kind of point it out or share it because I did really like it. It gave a good visual and names of different food items, so we read that one together as well. So moving on to our audiobook that we like to listen to. I actually ended up getting a book through Hoopla this time instead of Audible, called In the Reign of Terror, A Story of the French Revolution by G.A. Hendry. And we've listened, I'd say we're about 2/3 of the way through. We still have a couple hours to listen to. It's been really good so far. Definitely insight into the minds of people during the French Revolution, the aristocrats or the royalists, I guess. I'll share more next month, but so far we're enjoying it, and there's been some funny parts, some sad parts, so I'll share more next month. So then moving on to the kids. So my 12-year-old, he is a huge Percy Jackson fan. He's been reading lots of those books again. And then he read Helen Keller, Story of My Life, which I forgot to bring down. This is one from the Good and the Beautiful library, and he gave it 4 stars. He thought it was quite good, so he enjoyed it. And then Tyler, he just is my, how old is he now? He's my 10-year-old. I always forget their ages. He's 10. He has been reading lots of comic books and Pokemon. They all do, all my 3 older boys. They love their comic books, their graphic novels, their Pokemon. Yeah, so he's been reading a lot of those books. Okay, and then my 9-year-old, Nathan, he read the 2nd book in the Hardy Boys series. I'm glad he's liking these books. He's really liking them. And again, those comic books and everything. And then I had my 3 older boys read quite a few independent reads to go along with what we were learning about. So they read You Wouldn't Want to Be an Aristocrat During the French Revolution. They read Captain Cook. They read Australia and Oceania. They read The Wicked Histories, Catherine the Great. They read Osborne's Marie Antoinette. And then they read the graphic novel Eli Whitney as well. So they had quite a few independent reads. Now my 6-year-old daughter, she continues to read the Canadian Flyer series. She's getting quite good at reading it on her own. And then she takes out a whole bunch of like the early readers and graphic novels. She loves the Frozen ones and Tinkerbell ones from our library. So she does a lot of those. So then that just leaves me. So I read The Girls with No Names by Serena Burdick, and I really enjoyed this book. It's a story about 2 sisters in the early 1900s, east coast of the US, I think it's New York, and just kind of what life was like for women and for girls. And it's really interesting because if you look at the back of the book, it talks about kind of what happens, and this girl goes looking for her sister and she ends up in this home for like wayward girls. But there's actually another storyline interweaved with that was really fascinating as well. It's sad, you know, life was hard for women and girls at that time, even for wealthy ones like these girls. But it was a really good book. I really did enjoy it. Again, sad. It was emotional, but I highly recommend it. So that's everything that we read, I think, in February. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you've thought of them. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments as well, and I'll get back to you. Let me know what you're reading, because I love getting suggestions and I love hearing of new books that we can use for school or I can read for myself. So I hope otherwise this finds you having a great day. Take care.